All right, let's just jump right in. Think about it. You use apps every single day, right? For banking, streaming music, talking to your friends, pretty much everything. But here's the thing you might not realize. Underneath it all, these apps are built on two totally different philosophies. One is all about control, and the other, it's all about freedom. This is really the story of who controls your digital world.
So I want you to really think about this for a second. Who really controls your favorite apps? When you post something on social media or you save a file to the cloud, who's actually in charge of that data? Who gets to make the rules? You know, that question right there is the core of the whole thing. It's the huge difference between the apps we're used to and this new wave of tech that wants to flip that power dynamic on its head.
So first up, let's talk about the world we all live in, the one we know. The vast majority of applications you use today, they all work under one really familiar model. The best way to think about it is like a kingdom, you know? There's a central king on the throne, and they govern, well, everything. And the magic word here is single entity. In one of these centralized apps, it just means one company, one organization, owns the servers, holds all the user data, and they write all the rules. Your phone, your computer, that's the client, it's constantly pinging this central server to get information and just to work properly. And believe me, this model is everywhere. We're talking about the absolute giants: Facebook, X, Netflix, Spotify, Amazon, even your online banking app. They all run on central servers that are managed by those big companies. I mean, this is the architecture that built the modern internet as we know it. And look, there's a reason this model is so popular. It has some huge advantages. These apps are fast, they're efficient, and for developers, they're super easy to maintain and update. But there's always a but, right? There's a trade-off. If that one central server goes down, the whole app is toast. That's what we call a single point of failure. And because one company is in charge, they have the ultimate power to control content, to censor things. And your data privacy? Well, that basically comes down to you trusting them to do the right thing.
But what if? What if you could build an app without a king? What if the rules weren't enforced by some company, but by code? Code that everyone could see and that nobody could change once it was set. Well, that brings us to the key piece of technology that makes a completely different way of doing things possible.
And that technology is the smart contract. Now, don't let the name fool you. It's not a legal document you sign. It's code. The best way to think of it is like a digital vending machine. If you put in the right payment, you meet the conditions, it automatically executes the agreement and gives you your soda. There's no cashier, no middleman. The code itself is the rule enforcer.
And that leads to this perfect little phrase, the automation of trust. That's what this is all about. Smart contracts basically automate the need for trust. They get rid of the need for intermediaries like banks or lawyers or big tech companies to make sure everyone plays fair, because that trust is just built right into the transparent, self-executing code. So here's the crucial takeaway. These automated, trustless smart contracts. They're the engine. They are the fundamental building block, the backbone that lets developers create apps that don't need a central authority to run them.
All right, so with that in mind, let's now cross over to the other side of our digital world. Let's see how this whole smart contract thing builds an entirely new kind of application, the alternative to that centralized kingdom we were just talking about.
And this is it, a decentralized application, or DApp for short. Now, notice the huge difference from our first definition. Instead of one central server, a DApp runs on a distributed network of computers, a peer-to-peer network. No single person or company owns it. The power and the data is spread out across all its users.
So what really makes a DApp? Well, there are a few key things. First, no central authority. There's no CEO, no company server calling the shots. They run on that peer-to-peer network, and they use those smart contracts we just talked about to handle all their logic. And because their data is usually stored on a blockchain, it's pretty much set in stone. It's incredibly hard to change or delete anything, which makes them highly resistant to censorship. Okay, so now we have these two very different blueprints for building our digital world. One is centralized and, really efficient. The other is decentralized and super resilient. And this brings us right to the fundamental trade-off, the big question. What are we giving up and what are we gaining with each one?
Let's just break this down side by side. Control: centralized apps are run by a single company. DApps are run by a whole network. Data storage: private servers versus a public blockchain. Now, this is why centralized apps are typically way faster. They have a massive performance advantage, but that's also what makes them vulnerable to censorship and those single points of failure. DApps, on the other hand, can be slower, and yeah, the user experience can be a bit clunky for newcomers.
But what you get in return is user control and a resistance to censorship that centralized apps just can't offer.
Okay, so this isn't just theory. Where's this tech actually being used? Well, it's creating entire new fields. You've got decentralized finance, or DeFi. Platforms like Uniswap and Aave are basically building a whole new financial system that's open to anyone, without needing a bank's permission. And then there's the whole world of NFTs, on marketplaces like OpenSea. That's giving artists and creators a way to sell digital work directly to their fans, cutting out the middleman. Even in gaming, it means players can truly own their stuff. That legendary sword you found, it isn't just rented from the game company. It's an asset that you control.
But it is definitely not all smooth sailing. Remember how we said dApps can be slow? Here's a perfect, kind of funny example. A few years back, this game called CryptoKitties, where you could literally buy and trade digital cats, got so ridiculously popular that it ground the entire Ethereum network to a halt. It just clogged up the whole system. And that really highlights one of the biggest hurdles for dApps. Can they scale? And then there's security. Now, the decentralized network itself is pretty secure, but the smart contracts running on top of it, they can have bugs in the code. And if a hacker finds one of those bugs, the results can be absolutely catastrophic. Just in 2023, an estimated $1.9 billion were lost because of hacks and exploits in dApps. So while you get rid of the risk of a single company messing up, you introduce a new risk, flawed code.
So, with these two powerful, but, pretty flawed models sitting in front of us, where do we go from here? What does this choice really mean for the future of the internet?
When you boil it all down, this isn't just a technical debate about servers and code. The choice between a centralized app and a DApp is really a choice about power. Who has it and who gets to use it? Do we give that power to a single, efficient company that can move fast, but also has total control? Or do we spread it out among the users, creating a system that's maybe a little slower, a little messier, but ultimately more democratic and resilient? And that is the fundamental question that developers, users, and really all of us are facing as we build the next version of the web. The choices we make are going to define who holds the keys to our digital lives. So, will we choose the speed of kings or the power of the crowd? The answer isn't clear yet, but the debate is just getting started.